My mother had been dead for less than an hour when my brother turned to me and asked a question I'll never forget. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "How are we going to get through this?" Not even, "I can't believe Mom is gone." No. He looked at me while I was holding our mother's purse and personal belongings and asked, "Did Mom have any money in her purse?" And somehow, that wasn't even the worst thing he said. Because 30 seconds later, he asked the question he'd really been waiting to ask. The question that eventually destroyed him. But what happened next left everyone speechless. If you love Reddit revenge stories, family betrayal, and unbelievable karma, hit that like button and let's get into it. My brother and I grew up in the same house, but we definitely didn't grow up in the same world. Our family was old-fashioned, extremely old-fashioned. My brother was the son, the heir, the pride of the family, the future. I was the daughter, and that meant I was mostly invisible. While I was expected to be responsible, helpful, and independent, my brother was treated like royalty. If he made a mistake, someone fixed it. If he failed, someone rescued him. If he wanted something, someone paid for it. My parents loved both of us. I truly believe that. But they absolutely spoiled him. And years later, we'd all pay for it. As a teenager, my brother quickly figured out that life was easier when other people solved his problems. Why work hard when Mom and Dad would step in? Why budget when someone else would cover the bill? Why be responsible when being irresponsible always worked? By the time he reached college, he had become a professional taker. My parents paid for everything. Tuition, books, housing, food, spending money, everything. Their reasoning was simple. They wanted him focused on school. No distractions. No job. No financial stress. Just study and build a future. Sounds amazing, right? Most students would have been grateful. My brother treated it like an entitlement. And the worst part? He only contacted my parents when he needed money. No calls to check in. No visits just to spend time together. No concern for how they were doing. His relationship with them became transactional. Every phone call had a price tag attached. Every visit came with a request. Over time, even my parents started noticing. The son they had worshipped for years wasn't treating them like family. He was treating them like an ATM. And eventually they started saying no. That did not go over well. Around that time, my brother met the woman who would become his wife. And honestly, the two of them were a perfect match. Not in a romantic sense. In an entitlement sense. When they started dating, she was already 5 months pregnant with another man's child. Most people would have taken things slowly. Not my brother. Instead, he announced that he was considering dropping out of college so he could help raise the baby. My father nearly exploded. After all, Dad had spent years and tens of thousands of dollars paying for his education. He wasn't about to watch all of that go down the drain. Dad told him flat out, "If you quit school, you're paying every cent back." My brother was furious. For probably the first time in his life, someone had told him no. So he moved out, started working low-paying retail jobs, eventually finished his degree, and then made another baffling decision. He turned down a fantastic opportunity in the field he had studied for. Instead, he chose to continue struggling financially while playing hero. And from that point forward, money problems became the soundtrack of his life. But here's the thing. The money problems weren't really the issue. The issue was that every time he got into trouble, he expected someone else to fix it. Usually my parents. Then everything changed. Dad got sick. Very sick. The diagnosis was stomach cancer. Aggressive. Fast-moving. The doctors estimated he had about 3 months. 3 months. Imagine hearing that. Imagine being told the person who raised you likely wouldn't see another season. The entire family was devastated. Well, almost the entire family. Because while Dad was fighting for his life, my brother kept doing exactly what he'd always done. Calling when he needed money. Showing up when he wanted something. Leaving the second he didn't get it. Never asking how Dad was feeling. Never staying to help. Never sitting beside his hospital bed. Never offering support. Not once. Every visit followed the same script. Money. 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 It was disgusting. And even then, my parents still struggled to accept what they were seeing. Because no parent wants to believe their child has become that selfish. Then Dad died. Almost exactly when the doctors predicted. The grief was unbearable. 40 years of marriage gone. A lifetime of memories gone. An entire chapter of our family closed forever. I remember feeling numb, like my body was functioning, but my brain wasn't. Everything felt distant, muted, unreal. And then my brother walked into the house after the funeral. For one brief second, I thought maybe losing Dad would change him. Maybe this tragedy would finally wake him up. Maybe he'd realize what actually mattered. I couldn't have been more wrong, because the very first thing he asked my mother wasn't how she was coping. It wasn't whether she needed help. It wasn't whether she was okay. Instead, he asked, "Did Dad have life insurance?" The room went silent. And in that moment, something changed in my mother. I saw it happen. A switch flipped. The last illusion she had about her son finally shattered. And what she did next would become the most devastating lesson he'd ever receive. But my mother wasn't done yet. Because just 2 weeks later, she invited an old family friend to the house and secretly set a trap that would haunt my brother for years. About 2 weeks after Dad's funeral, I came home from work and found Mom sitting at the kitchen table with one of Dad's oldest friends.
George.
I'd known George my entire life. He wasn't just a family friend. He was practically family. More importantly, he worked in life insurance. The moment I saw paperwork spread across the table, I was confused. Dad had just died. Our family was still drowning in grief. So, why were they discussing insurance? I sat down and asked, "Mom, what's going on?" She smiled. Not a sad smile. Not a grieving smile. A strangely calm smile. The kind that makes you wonder if someone knows something you don't. Then she casually dropped a bombshell. I applied for a life insurance policy. I blinked. What? She nodded. $500,000. I nearly choked. $500,000? There was only one problem. There was absolutely no chance she'd qualify. Mom's health wasn't good. Not even close. She was diabetic. She had heart disease. She suffered from high blood pressure. Even I knew enough to understand that getting approved for a policy that size would be almost impossible. So I told her exactly that. "Mom, no offense, but there's no way they're approving that." She looked at me, still smiling. Then she said something that wouldn't make sense until much later. "Don't worry about it."
A pause.
Then she added, "Just make sure your brother knows." I frowned. "What?" "Not yet," she said. "Wait until the time is right." Then she went back to her paperwork, as if she hadn't just spoken in riddles. At the time, I thought grief was affecting her. Looking back, Mom knew exactly what she was doing. The weeks that followed were heartbreaking. Mom was struggling. Losing Dad after more than 40 years together had shattered her. The house felt different. Too quiet. Too empty. Every room reminded her of him. Every chair. Every photo. Every coffee cup. The loneliness was crushing. And during all of that, my brother still only called when he needed money. Nothing changed. In fact, if anything, he became worse. Now, he wasn't just asking for help. He was demanding it. He'd show up at Mom's house and start lecturing her, accusing her, manipulating her, using guilt as a weapon. "You don't care about your grandkids. You don't want them to have a good life. You've abandoned your family." The irony was unbelievable. The son, who couldn't be bothered to visit his grieving mother, was accusing her of not caring about family. And his wife was just as bad. Every conversation turned into a coordinated attack. Two adults trying to squeeze money out of an elderly widow who had just buried her husband. Who does that? Apparently they did. And through it all, Mom stayed calm. She listened, nodded, rarely argued, almost as if she knew something they didn't. Because she did. Then disaster struck. Only 4 weeks after that conversation about the insurance policy, Mom died. A heart attack, followed by a stroke. Just like that.
Gone.
Dad had been gone for only 6 weeks. And now Mom was gone too. I don't think I've ever experienced grief like that. People talk about heartbreak as a metaphor. But this wasn't the metaphor. It felt physical, like someone had reached into my chest and ripped something out. I could barely think, barely breathe, barely function. Everything became paperwork, phone calls, hospital forms, funeral arrangements.
Shock.
Endless shock. And somehow, in the middle of all that pain, my brother found a way to make it worse. After he finished the paperwork at the hospital, my brother offered to drive me home. I didn't want to be around him, but I wasn't exactly in a position to argue. I climbed into the passenger seat. In my lap sat Mom's personal belongings. Her purse, her jewelry, her clothing, the last things she'd ever touched. I remember staring at that purse, thinking about how ordinary it looked, how impossible it felt that she'd never carry it again. Then my brother spoke, and what came out of his mouth nearly made me open the car door while we were moving. Did Mom have any money in her purse? I turned slowly and looked at him. Surely I had heard him wrong. Surely. Our mother had been dead for less than an hour. Less than an hour. And he was asking about cash. Not memories. Not funeral plans. Not family. Money. Just money. I couldn't even speak. I opened the purse, found a $20 bill, and threw it at him.
Hard.
He grabbed it. And then came the question. The real question. The one he'd been waiting to ask. Did Mom have a life insurance policy? The second those words left his mouth, everything clicked. The meeting with George. The mysterious smile. The cryptic comment. Tell your brother when the time is right. This was the time. I looked straight ahead, trying not to laugh,
Trying not to cry.
trying not to scream. And I said,
Yeah.
his head snapped toward me. Really?
Yeah.
His eyes lit up. I could practically hear the cash register sound effect in his brain. Cha-ching. Then came the next question. How much? I answered. $500,000.
Silence.
Complete silence. The rest of the drive felt different, because I knew exactly what was happening inside his head. He wasn't grieving. He wasn't mourning. He wasn't remembering Mom. He was spending the money. Mentally. Already. He was imagining the checks, the purchases, the debt payments, the vacations, the lifestyle. $500,000. His dream had just come true. Or so he thought. What he didn't know was that Mom's final lesson had already begun. And over the next month, my brother would make a financial mistake so catastrophic that it would leave him buried under tens of thousands of dollars in debt. All because he believed money that never existed was already his. And when the truth finally arrived in the mail, everything exploded. Over the next month, life became a blur. I was still trying to process losing both of my parents within 6 weeks. Some days I could barely get out of bed. Other days I buried myself in paperwork because staying busy hurt less than thinking. Meanwhile, my brother seemed to be doing surprisingly well. At least on the surface. At first, I thought maybe grief affected people differently. Maybe he was handling things in his own way. Then I started hearing things. Little comments. Little hints. Conversations that didn't quite add up. And the more I listened, the more I realized something disturbing. My brother wasn't acting like someone waiting to inherit money. He was acting like someone who had already received it. He and his wife suddenly started making purchases. Big purchases. Expensive purchases. They talked about future plans, future upgrades, future vacations, bills they intended to pay off, debts they intended to erase. And every conversation seemed to circle back to one thing, that $500,000 policy. In their minds, the money was guaranteed. Done deal. Locked in. All they had to do was wait for the check. The check that would never come. About a month after Mom's funeral, I checked the mailbox. Among the usual stack of envelopes sat one addressed to Mom. The return address immediately caught my attention. The insurance company. My stomach tightened. For a split second, I wondered if this was it. The approval. The payout. The paperwork. I opened it. Started reading. And within seconds, I knew exactly what it was. A rejection letter. The very first paragraph made everything crystal clear. Due to her medical history and health conditions, she did not qualify. No policy. No coverage. No payout. No $500,000 check. Nothing. I stared at the page. Then I started laughing. Not because my mother had been rejected, not because of the money, but because I suddenly understood exactly what she had done. Mom knew. She knew she wouldn't qualify. She knew my brother would hear $500,000 and immediately start counting money that didn't belong to him. She knew greed would do the rest. And somehow, even after she was gone, she had managed to teach him one final lesson. The lesson Dad had spent years trying to teach. The lesson neither of them could get through his thick skull. Actions have consequences. And entitlement eventually comes with a bill. Our family's trustee and executor reviewed the letter. Then he asked a simple question. Do you want me to tell your brother? I didn't even hesitate.
No.
He raised an eyebrow. You want to do it? Oh, absolutely. After everything my brother had put our parents through, I wasn't missing this moment. Not for anything. I picked up the phone, dialed his number, and waited. The second he answered, I could hear excitement in his voice.
Hey.
Did something come from the insurance company? I almost smiled.
Yeah. A pause.
Then immediate enthusiasm. Seriously? When do we get the check? There it was. Not, how are you doing? Not, what did they say? Straight to the money. Always. Straight.
To the
money. I took a breath. Then delivered the line. You're not getting a check. Silence. What? The application was denied. Another pause. Longer this time. Then I repeated it. Mom didn't qualify. The explosion happened instantly. My brother completely lost his mind. The screaming started immediately. What do you mean she didn't qualify? His voice got louder, angrier, more desperate. What about my kids? There it was again. His favorite shield. His children. Every bad decision. Every financial disaster. Every irresponsible choice. Somehow became everybody else's responsibility because he had kids. He kept yelling, I can't pay rent. I have bills. We need that money. We already made plans. Then came the line that truly blew my mind. We still have to pay for our vacation. Vacation. A vacation. The man was screaming about money he never owned while complaining about an upcoming vacation. I almost dropped the phone. Then suddenly another voice appeared.
His wife.
And she was somehow even worse. She grabbed the phone and immediately launched into a full attack. This is your fault. I pulled the receiver away from my ear. She was practically shrieking. You stole it. You're jealous. You just want the money for yourself. Then she accused me of stealing from my nephew. Money. That never existed.
Think about that.
She was accusing me of stealing imaginary money. The logic was incredible. She threatened lawsuits, threatened court, threatened legal action, threatened everything except personal responsibility. I listened for a minute, then calmly hung up. Best decision of the day. The truth comes out. Later, I learned something even crazier. The damage had already been done. Apparently, after hearing about the $500,000 policy, my brother had started spending. Aggressively, recklessly, confidently. Because in his mind, the inheritance check was inevitable. By the time the rejection letter arrived, he had reportedly piled up nearly $40,000 in debt. $40,000. All based on money he didn't actually have. The vacation, the purchases, the lifestyle upgrades, the plans, all built on fantasy. And when reality finally arrived, the entire house of cards collapsed. Mom's final lesson had worked better than anyone expected. Here's the part that still hits me years later. My mother never screamed at him, never fought him, never disowned him, never sought revenge in the traditional sense. Instead, she simply allowed his greed to expose itself. She gave him exactly what he wanted. Hope. Just enough hope for him to reveal who he really was. And he did the rest all by himself. That's what made it so powerful. Mom never destroyed him. His own entitlement did. His own greed did. His own selfishness did. She simply held up a mirror. And he couldn't handle what he saw. Sometimes people think karma is dramatic. A lightning strike. A public humiliation. A movie-style ending. But real karma often looks different. Sometimes karma is simply giving someone enough rope to tie their own knot. My brother spent years treating our parents like a bank account. Years putting money ahead of family. Years believing someone would always rescue him. Then one day, there was nobody left to rescue him. And the consequences finally arrived. Right on schedule. If this Reddit revenge story gave you goosebumps, hit that like button and subscribe for more unbelievable family betrayal, pro-revenge, and karma stories every day. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if your brother asked about life insurance before your mother's body was even cold? Trust me, the inheritance story that happened afterward is even crazier. You won't want to miss the next one.